Welcome, Stephen. All right, so first of all, welcome to week 78, 79. I think it's week 78. Wow, can you believe this has been going on for over a year? That's a little bit scary. So, it's very good. So obviously I'm the host for tonight. I'm filling in for Ed while he's over in Thailand. Oh, we've just been told it's actually week 79. We lost a week there. So ladies and gentlemen, in the attendees list, thank you for joining us for today. Stephen, again, thank you for joining us once again to give us your insight, your knowledge, and just your general expertise. So we do have some amazing topics, and welcome. You're looking suave, Steve.
Mate, I've got a haircut today.
I know. I just loaded mine with gel to hide the fact that I've got a bald patch coming up in the back here. It's one of those things I finally admitted is finally falling out. And I was like, yeah, okay, I admit it. So, yeah. Scary.
Just go with it, mate. Go with it.
It's called Signs of Wisdom. That's like when I've got the beard, I get grey hairs now as well. So it's wisdom. It's wisdom, pure wisdom. So, yeah. All right. So how about we get into it? Because I know you've got for the syndicate people, we do have an update tonight as well after this one. So how about we just jump straight in? So the first topics, obviously, we want Australian economy to kick off on the start and the Australian news. This is kind of like more of a political one than anything, but it actually has very, very far-reaching consequences. So this is Ben Roberts-Smith case. It's a disgrace of veterans. And knowing what's happened to him and with the defamation, because you got to remember there was no charges laid for this one. Why would anyone in their right mind serve in the Australian military when they treat their soldiers this way?
Well, pretty much as a volunteer force. What you're saying to your volunteer force is, we don't care about you. You can go perform acts of valor, whatever, and we're going to treat you like shit. And that's the biggest problem, So, and this is why it doesn't work with what they're trying to do with AUKUS, with the expansion of, the Blue Water Navy, with the drone programs, with the Air Force program, the missile program, and the Air Force programs. Well, you need people to serve, right? You need people to volunteer to serve to fill the positions. But at the same time, you've got the heads of the military, right, Angus Houston and all his cronies, actively out there trying to take medals and acts of valor away from people for stuff that he approved. You got to remember that as the head of the Air Force, or he was head of the Air Force, I think, at the time, and I think he may have been special operations. Anyway, doesn't matter. As the heads of the military, they approve this conduct. So if anyone should have their medals stripped, or if anyone should have anything charged, it should be them first. They should jump in front of this and say, no, right? We did this. We are the head of the snake, right? It's our fault, but they're not. They're just absolutely slaying everyone one below them, and it's an absolute joke. Most of these guys that are now generals and running the armed forces, yeah, they may have been in action at some point in time, but they make all these decisions from comfy offices and go home overnight. They're not in the field. They don't know what these guys were going through. And when you hear what some of these guys were going through, man, it's a shit job. Why? Why we're treating them like this is just disgraceful. It harks back to how we treated the Vietnam vets, and goes even further back to how we treated the guys that went and helped, with the Boer War and the First World War.
It always reminds me to the Afghan files where Hasty was, I think he was a captain of the SAS at the time, and it was a situation where they were cutting hands off the victims because they were under heavy fire, and the rules of engagements were photo of the face, a hand sample, and a scan of their hand. They just don't have time, so they did the best thing that they could. Even in that situation, they took it to the military lawyers and they were cleared. They were just following instructions. And I know there's been other cases like this, but they've raised concerns. They got it cleared. What else do you expect from the troops? So it's not the troops' fault in this situation.
Not the troops' faults, but the troops are always the first ones to get hung out to dry. And it's just absolutely wrong. A true leader and a true head of the Defence Force would come out and support his troops and say, if anyone's going to lose my medal, here's mine first, because I was in charge.
Yeah. I just, the thing that I look at on a global scale, especially for the military, especially with everything that's going on globally at the moment, you look at all the countries with really strong militaries, and they're the ones that are most likely to survive a catastrophe, whether it's an economic or there's a war. So I don't understand why the Australian government is targeting the military so severely with this, especially with when AI comes into play as well. It's with drones, drone strikes and all that sort of stuff. You still need human oversight on these things. Like AI's don't make things amazing, but you need the human oversight. What do you think the end game is with all of this?
A lot of it is they're trying to play politician, right? So once you become a flag officer, someone basically at the top of the tree, you stop becoming an officer looking after troops, and you become a politician. And most of these guys are setting up what their next career move is, who they're going to go work for, which major corporation, or are they going to get into politics? And that's what they're all doing. They're feathering out their own nest, and they're making sure that they're clean when they go through it. But what they don't realise is, especially if they go into politics, this will be hung over them. Politicians are out there a lot smarter than these guys, and a lot smarter than what these guys have ever been when it comes to this dirty fighting, tactics. They wish they were back in Afghanistan or something like that, getting properly shot at. So a lot of it's just coming down to once again, it's this bubble thing. Politicians think Twitter's real, right? The military, think that the whole world revolves around what's been published out there, and once again the Twitter polls. A lot of this has all been driven by the Twitter polls. Well, we know 80% of everything on Twitter is AI generated. It's all bots. So if you believe in Twitter, you're a fool. If you believe in anything that's generated on Twitter, you're a fool. So
to me, it seems like they've got too much attention in their own backyards rather than looking at the grand scheme of things. So this is a I was going to say this is a good transition into the next one. The next one that's happening in Australia is talking about NIMBYism, so not in my backyard. So the state government is actually making moves to remove building permits authority away from the state councils. I know from myself with my involvement in politics, I actually hate to say it, I think this is a good thing because most councils have no idea what they're doing. So as a businessman yourself, how would you feel about this one then?
Oh, this is perfect. I've started to hear the rumbles. Oh God, I'm bleeding. I've started to see the rumbles of this in the halls of some of the state politicians who are going. Councils are working to undermine what state governments want. And remember, at the end of the day, Australia is a federation of states, right? And if you run by our constitution, the states have all the power. Right, regardless of what everyone thinks about states and all that sort of stuff. And once again, anyone who thinks we're going to abolish the state, you're a fucking idiot. Go read our constitution, right? And it's as simple as that. The one level of government we should be abolishing or making a lot smaller is federal governments, followed by councils. Councils are just a delivery arm of the state government. Now, what's happening is councils are being taken over by the Greens, and have been taken over by people who don't want any development. But they're also the people that turn around and say, we want a lower cost of living, lower the housing, lower this, lower that. But they're the ones who are actually at the problem. So state government getting some balls. The first state government I think that's going to do this is New South Wales. There is a massive... what do you call it? A massive divide already between councils and state government in New South Wales, and a lot of stuff that some councils do in New South Wales is purely 100%. If the state government says sky's blue, they'll say no, it's white, right, or green or whatever it is. just purely out of spite. So I think New South Wales will be the first to do it, but I've heard a lot of this coming out of South Australia, Queensland, and WA. So, yeah, it's quite...
Yeah, I know Mark McGowan, before he stood down, had actually started drafting a bill to remove the approval process in WA. But I don't know what's happened from that point. I haven't been able to find any more further information on it. But we've seen, especially in WA, how powerful some of these councils have actually become, where they're starting to remove Australia Day celebrations. They're changing approval processes. Road 8 highway in WA, they actually managed through their lobbying to be able to get a whole highway cancelled. How far do you think this is going to stretch? Do you think it will actually go Australia-wide, or do you think this will just be localised in, say, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth?
No, I think if it gets traction, it'll go Australia-wide. And the reason I say that is because we've got the one state. Basically, we've got the one party across all states, right? Tasmania's the Libs at the moment, but the Libs, they're down there are closer to Labor than anything. So we're pretty much, once it starts, it'll go. And it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because politicians, once they smell power, right, and they can go, oh, Jesus, we can get this back, right, and they will start taking it all back. There's a big cry here in Queensland, has been for a while, that because we've got, Queensland's weird. In some places we've got mega councils, like the Gold Coast. So the Gold Coast city budget is bigger than, I think, a few state governments' budgets. Right, that's how big the council is. So it's a mega council, and we've got 2 or 3 of them here in Queensland. So what'll happen is that once the government, the state governments realise that, hey, we can curb their political power, that they will start this and force them back to roads, racks, rubbish. Man, the council here on the Gold Coast, pretty much every department that is in state government, they've got a similar one here in council. You know, they've got an office of tourism, they've got an office of in industry and development, an office of education, an office of this, office of that. It's like, hang on a minute, no, councils, have a look at your charter. It's roads, rates, and rubbish. Right? Look after the parks, make sure the roads are nice, make sure the rubbish is collected, right? A lot of the planning schemes that councils put up are actually invalid under the state planning scheme, right? Because they don't match and marry, and that's why we have all this problem with the NIMBYs winning, and then the environment courts and that not standing up. And I don't know why they put environment and planning courts in the same bucket, which it's always been a stupid court system, that one. But anyway, but once they realise they can get the power, they can get planning through quicker, because to meet anywhere near the housing demand that we've got coming in the next couple of years, you're going to have to reduce the planning approvals from most of them on average 3 years. You're going to have to reduce that to under 12 months, right? Or otherwise we're going to have no developer out there developing anything. The other thing is what the NIMBYs are really doing is stopping infill, brownfield development. If we want to make our cities livable, right, we've got to densify up. If you have a look at most cities around the world, especially in Europe, the US, their inner city areas are 3 and 4 stories everywhere, right? And that's why you can have a city like Paris with its population that is like 3. So Paris's population is twice the population of Melbourne City, but Paris is smaller than Melbourne in its footprint. Yeah. And that's because of how dense it is. Right. And that's what we've got to come up with here. Now, is that going to happen in places like Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne off the bat? No. Where I see this densification happening is, and I was listening to a really good demographer in a podcast today. that's what I do when I drive around. I love listening to these podcasts from these guys. That semi-rural cities with very good airports or train connectivity to the major hub are where we can have the best sort of best densification, so we can actually make them a satellite city of them. So for instance,
so like Townsville in Queensland.
Yeah, Townsville in Queensland, Newcastle to Sydney, Wollongong to Sydney, all that sort of stuff. So once we get that sorted out, I think we can have a greater density and availability.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, because I know this has come up in one of your other videos as well, do you think the NIMBYs are going to really push back against the Aboriginal Heritage Act, knowing how hard that's going to make the approval process on top of that? Or do you think the state government's going to step in and just say, no, this is going ahead and just absolutely turn everything to a shit show?
No, I think the NIMBYs that have the biggest voice on this aren't going to be worried about it, because they think that's just miners and farmers, and they don't care about miners and farmers. So that is, that's sort of not something that they really care about, and it's an Indigenous, so they're sort of going to fall on the Indigenous side. The NIMBYs in the rural and remote areas where this is really going to affect, they're going to be against it. That's for sure, because it is going to encroach on their power and what they can do. So.
Okay, awesome. So just talking about what people are doing with their own homes, it looks like working from home is the new home wrecker or new work wrecker. It's becoming a bit of a battleground by the looks of it. Commonwealth Bank is ordering their workers back to the office, and even Elon Musk is calling work from home now immoral. What's your thoughts on that? What have you been seeing on the business side of things?
So, and this basically follows what we've been talking about, where we need to really rethink our cities and have a look at what we can do and how we can densify and make our cities better for both workers and businesses. The Elon Musk thing is quite interesting, because basically what he said is his workers can't work from home because they can't build a car or a rocket or bore a tunnel from their home, right? So what he's saying is if blue collar people have to go to a job, white collar people should too, right? If you want equity and fairness and all this sort of stuff, well, it's got to apply to everything. And that's his argument, right? But this is one of the problems we've got with all these people, is that they only want equity and fairness when it benefits them. They don't want equity and fairness that benefits society as a whole, right? So it's an individualist thing. And I know this sounds really strange, but communism really picks on that individual
identity.
I'm an individual, right? But what happens is the individual falls to the lowest common denominator, right? So as an individual, to get this equity and fairness that suits that individual, what happens is society slides to the lowest common denominator, where everyone can be the same. And then what they realize is, oh shit, we pushed for the wrong thing, which is what happened. Which is what happened. It happened in Cuba, it happened in Venezuela, it's happened in China, it's happened in basically anywhere where there's been communism. They all went fighting for, we want our individual rights and freedom. And then when the communist dictator takes over, they realise that, they end up, the chewing gum on someone's boot. And
then they all flee to Australia.
And massive snowflakes. So the whole work from home. Yes, there is people that can be work from home. And what I think is going to happen is I think a lot of these large corporations are going to go, okay, you can work from home, but now you're an independent contractor. So what we're going to see is an explosion of the gig economy into into office jobs, right? So if you're a data entry person, well, you might work for 4 different companies because you'll be forced to make ends meet. Because it'll be, okay, if you want to work from home, we're going to call you a contractor. You're going to have to get all the, become a contractor to get around then PSI rules. You're going to have to work for more than one company. So you don't have 80% of your income coming from one. So, they're going to go, oh, fuck, right? And the companies are going to go, no, but that's what you wanted. You wanted the ability to work from home. You wanted the ability and the freedom to do whatever you want. That's how you get it. Right.
It's really interesting because what you're saying is, there was an article in the Australian, I think it was last week, was saying that the amount of people that are striving for leadership positions is because everyone wants to work from home. They don't want to be leaders in their industries anymore. So that really marries up with what, I hate to say it, the Australian mainstream media has actually got something right for once.
Yeah. So, and the demographers are picking on this. They're saying this is what's going to happen. The millennials, which are going to be the driving the largest force of the Australian population soon, because mind you, it's not just millennials that are born here. Pretty much everyone that we're importing is a millennial. Students that stay, which is, I think it's 1 in 6 students that come to this country stay, they're millennials. They're at uni, right? So, and they're joining the workforce. The majority of everyone else that comes in that meets the test are all under 30, right? So we've got this thing of they're going to be the biggest and they're going to get what they want. Corporations will fight back. They just don't know how yet. The major corporations are trying not to look bad and are trying to get themselves together with it. But that's leading to a whole heap of push and pull factors inside, because the other thing that businesses are losing is all the transfer knowledge. So accountancy firms, law firms especially, if you're not working in the office and sitting around the desk when deals are being done or when decisions are being made on projects and that sort of stuff, there's no absorption of knowledge, that osmosis of knowledge you get from being part of a team. You can't get that on Zoom. Gary Vaynerchuk Gary V had a very interesting thing on this, where he said in one of his companies, I can't remember which one it is, basically he makes everyone turn Zoom on when they turn up to work, and it stays on all day. So that so that people can just go, hey, Bob, what's this, blah, 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 and they can get that office thing going while they're while they're doing this remote work from home. Still doesn't have the same osmosis effect as being in the room, because there could be stuff written down that you're not seeing being written down, or notes being taken, or stuff that happens on the sidelines that's outside of the view. And that is that's going to be an interesting thing, and then that's going to be a very, very big problem in the future for companies and employees, because you're just not going to have that extra knowledge.
Yep. Talking about the problems that a lot of businesses are going to have, the other one here is the universal basic income. There's a lot of talk about it, the universal basic income. So I'm not sure if the people actually in the chat who are with us today actually know what it is. So did you want to just quickly give them a quick breakdown and actually see what's going on in that space at the moment, especially with the Greens?
Yeah, so the universal basic income, for those that don't understand, it's basically the dole for everyone, right? So everyone gets the minimum wage. So you don't have to work, you just get given money to live. whether you're at university, wherever you are. So it pretty much, it's a great driver of disenfranchisation of people. It's a massive driver of envy between people, because people that want to get ahead can still get ahead, right? But they're going to then have all these other people floating around, and then when you get ahead, you're going to be looking back at all these people going, well, why am I paying all this tax to pay for them? So then you become mobile and you move and all the rest of it. And we're seeing that happen now, where, say, cities in the US like San Francisco and LA and Sacramento, New York, where these sort of things are coming in, are driving all the talent and driving all those that have ambition to places like Texas, Dallas and Houston, Miami, Tampa, so forth, where those things are. So that's basically what a universal basic is. Now, the Greens are pushing for one here in Australia, and there is a lot of talk about this coming out of the Twitterazzi world, and a lot of talk coming out of these think tanks, the billionaire-backed think tanks. Now, the reason I think a lot of the billionaire guys would be pushing this is it creates a cheap workforce. So what happens is think of work for the dole, but on a mass scale. So what happens is, they lure you in with a universal basic income. Then a couple of years down the track, they say, every Thursday, you're going to have to go and pick vegetables. Or every Tuesday, you're going to have to go and mow a lawn somewhere. So what they'll do is, they'll get you addicted to the universal basic income. Then they'll start putting little measures on it, going, oh, no, you're going to have to go do this, or you're going to have to go do this to keep it, or we're going to reduce it, right? And it'll be, the reduction will be enough that you go, Jesus, those couple of hours, I'm just going to have to go do it. And that's what will happen and become a compliant long-term workforce. And that's why I think a lot of the billionaire industrialists are really starting to get behind it and talk about it. And it will create a nice little cheap workforce for fashion industry, for instance. Yeah.
Great comment from Susan here. Sounds a lot like slavery regime, New World Order. So very, very interesting.
Slavery's never gone away. So slavery's never gone away.
Economic slavery, minimum wage.
You now just get. That's why you got a job. You now get paid to be a slave.
And the slave owners don't have to pay for your health, your living expenses and all that sort of stuff. You got to deal with that as well on top of everything else. Yep. So, no, the slavery never got abolished. It was always there. They just tried to jazz it up as minimum wage. I know you're very, very time-wise. I'm just keeping an eye on the time, so we don't have you for much longer. So one of everyone's favourite part is actually on the global side of things. So it was a good little segue, Susan. So thank you for that. Going into the global economy now, Trump watch. So just a reminder, Trump Jr. will be in Australia, not WA, unfortunately. So he is here for a tour. But his dad, Donald Trump, has been indicted again. So this is indictment number 2.
Or
3.
No,
he got done once while he was in power as well, didn't he?
No, we'll see. There's the federal indictments and the state indictments, and then there's the civil suits that he's involved in. So there's about 15 things all up that he's that's all part. And mind you, they've all been launched by Democrats, so that it's absolute politicization. And the problem with this is now, as soon as the Democrats get out of power and the Republicans get in, we'll have all the Democrats getting indicted and going to jail. The best thing that could happen to Biden is he dies in office. because the Republicans will drag him and his family through about 40 different court cases once they get into power. Right? It's just going to be on for young and old. And you can already see the positioning of a lot of these Republican DAs and all that sort of stuff waiting for them to especially if Trump gets in the White House. So Trump's been indicted officially for the second time. There is the third one will come out. I think that'll come out from the January 6th stuff. There's another couple of lawsuits that are going to be on the back of this. But anyway, he's got 37 counts. They're trying to do it under the Espionage Act, which is just ridiculous. And all the media footage, I love how they frame the media footage, is they're taking photos of all these boxes, right, that he supposedly done. And the FBI has already said that most of the photos out there showing the boxes, none of that is actually part of the evidence trail. Right? And it's just it's just bullshit that people are putting out there. Some of it's his personal, tax filings and all that sort of stuff that the FBI just took photos of when they did the raids. And they're the ones that have been leaked because they're massive stacks of boxes that makes you think, oh, he took all this stuff. But really, he didn't. He took about 3,000 documents. But when you have a look at what they're showing, it looks like he's taken 30 million documents, but it's just how they're doing it.
So just to put that into perspective, I think it's really important because we actually run a printing company. This is about 2,500 pages.
Yes.
So that puts it into perspective. He's probably got 2 of those boxes full of documents, but then they're showing whole hallways full of documentation. One of the great things about running a printing business from home, you have access to all these sort of documents. So
yeah,
I think the whole thing is an absolute joke, and I really hope that Hillary and Bill Clinton get caught up in it as well, because I think personally, if you're a criminal, you should be held accountable.
So, yeah, it used to be that if you're a politician, you don't put another politician in jail. That's how we held a civil society for many years, and we don't fall into a banana republic. As soon as you start weaponizing the judiciary, doesn't matter who does it, as soon as you start weaponizing the judiciary, that's why ICACs are bad, by the way, right? And here in Australia are very, very good at taking people to ICACs or IBACs or whatever you want to call it, and smearing their name when there's never, ever anything there. Because all they've got to do is get the headline in the paper for 3 or 4 days running, and then it just disappears because it takes so long to clear people out of these things. But the damage is already done with the headline. Right? And I think in New South Wales, the only people that have ever been convicted from ICACs are actually Labor. Oh no, there was one Nationals guy. So, and I think it's something like 8-1 that the Labor guys actually do get convicted of stuff versus the other way. But the amount of people that have actually been through the system, it's like 8-1 the other way, right? Yeah, so it's just an absolutely ridiculous, and that's why we don't want a politicised judiciary, and you never want a politicised judiciary. You want a fair judiciary, or otherwise you start, basically America's destroying itself over this one simple issue, regardless of anything else. This one thing alone will destroy the entire in the American system.
Do you see any way for that? Have they gone past the point of no return? Like, is there a
Oh,
way
yeah, the point of no return for them was like the 2008 election.
Okay.
It's well and truly over and gone. So.
It's really interesting because you're talking about how the Democrats keep attacking Trump over and over and over again. But you have a look at his fundraising figures, and it seems that he's raising money hand over fist to run campaigns now.
So every time he gets indictment, and it's happened both times now. It's happened the day that he gets indicted. it raises $4 to $5 million and increases by 1 or 2 percentage points. So the last I saw is at like 63% now in the GOP primaries. No one has ever at this stage of a primary been at that level. Normally the highest you sort of get is 30.
The only other politician I've seen with that sort of approval rating was Mark McGowan during COVID, or Castro when he had the tanks behind him telling people how to vote. So
yeah,
that's a huge effort.
But this is for a primary. This is not someone who's in power. This is pre-posturing, to be the candidate, and it's just phenomenal. Yeah.
I have to say, I think the Let's Go Brandon campaign really helped him out as well. So the major cities are on doom loop due to work from home. New York is one such thing. What's doom loop? Like, I've got this note here. I'm thinking doom loop. Is that a typo?
No. So it's what demographers are calling it's a doom loop inside the city. So following on from work from home, about what we're saying, the work from home is destroying our inner city. So what happens is say 50% of the workforce works from home. They come in 1 or 2 days a week. There's not enough mass now in a lot of these buildings to then support the restaurants, the shoe cleaners, the little stores, the newspaper stands, the flowers, and all the ongoing businesses that are there to support the community. So what happens is these guys go, well, I don't have the business, so I'll shut down my restaurant and move it to the suburbs. Then it becomes a boarded up shop. Then because that business is shut down, all the side businesses beside it lose their business. So they all become shut down. New York, this is what happened in New York in 1970, 71, 72, before Trump got hold of the Commodore Tower in 77, and with Giuliani and a few other guys in the 80s, turned New York around. We've come full back cycle, and they're calling it a doom loop because what happens is, and they believe that New York, especially New York, San Francisco is very close behind. Chicago is surprisingly okay because it's a very cheap city to live. But Pittsburgh, Detroit, Boston, there's a few others around as well that are all falling in. I think Cincinnati was another one that are all falling into these doom loops where, because everyone's working from home, businesses are shutting down, moving, the city's reorganizing. And what happens then is, well, the wealthy that live right downtown go, well, we don't have the atmosphere that we used to live, so now we're going to go live somewhere else. So in New York, they're finding is people are staying in Connecticut where they used to commute. Now they're staying in Connecticut or wherever, Washington, Maryland, and the offices are actually moving to those locations. So, the stockbrokers and all that sort of stuff, they had their offices in New York where they're going, well, most of our employees are in Virginia, so we're going to put the office in Virginia now. And it's sprouting little communities based off those businesses. Because some of these businesses are 2,000 and 3,000 people.
It's really interesting because I remember Warren talking about that happening on the government side of things, where all the major governments will start fracturing and separating, and we'll end up with all these little communities working amongst themselves. So it's no wonder that major businesses are doing exactly the same thing. And just to put that into perspective for the people here in WA, just go have a look through Subiaco or Northbridge on the weekend, where it used to be a vibrant community, especially the nightlife. All these little shops have shut down. So, and it's just flowing through now. Like half the pubs in Northbridge now have actually shut down as well. So it's not just major cities this is happening. It's smaller cities like Perth as well that's also happening, which I found really, really quite fascinating. So
and it's going to be worse with a Perth than it would at Brisbane, where Brisbane had more villages as it was. Where Perth didn't really. It had a downtown area. Adelaide is the same. Melbourne's feeling it really bad. Melbourne, downtown Melbourne, you talk to people down there and, half the city's still not back. So, and it's noticeable. When I was down there last, you could really tell that there was no cohesion in the city. You get on the tram at 9 o'clock in the morning and there'd be 3 people on it.
So one of the questions from a political point of view, what can you see being done to actually reverse some of these things? Because we need functioning capital cities. We need functioning major commercial hubs. If everyone's going to the suburbs, first of all, I can see urban sprawl getting out of control. A lot of the crime problems that are associated with urban sprawl will go into these outer suburbs as well. What can we do to start bringing things like business back to the CBDs, especially white collar businesses?
And this is where the state governments are going to have to get control of their NIMBYs stuff, and because it's not just, it's the NIMBYs in the cities as well as the NIMBYs outside. Corporations are going to have to stand up and actually go, well, you know, if you're going to work from home, you're going to have to become a contractor. I'll guarantee 80% of everyone will return to the office tomorrow if they were forced to go that way. So it's really out of the hands of politicians, because politicians have done this themselves, right? And no one trusts politicians to get us out. It's pretty much the communities themselves are going to have to sort it out and actually bring values back that underpin this. So watch this space, because it's going to be fluid. And you're right, we do need functioning major cities if we're going to have a strong economy and that sort of stuff. But it also goes back to the makeup of our economy. If you took so mining and agriculture employ about 450,000 people out of the entire workforce. The workforce is about 13.5 million people. So if you look at that and say, okay, you know, 500,000 people were involved in mining, directly involved in mining and agriculture. It's probably another 2 million in associated industries. So that's 2.5 million. That still leaves 10 million that are in service-based industries, in all the other stuff. So in public service, for instance, in education, in hospitals, in medicine, in the professional services, which are our biggest employers. So, yeah. So they're the industry. The white collar industries have got to stand up and do it, because the blue collar industries, well, everyone's got to go back to work. You can't weld a widget at home, you know. Yeah.
Okay, so just for the people who are listening on the Zoom, if you do have any questions for Stephen, now's the best chance to get it in there. I have gone through some of the comments in the chats that are coming through, so make sure you put your questions in as well. Frank, this is in regards to the universal basic income. Similar to the age pension being means and assets tested makes me wonder why the hell did I work hard and pay taxes only to lose out and be penalised for having saved for retirement. The other one I want to add to that one as well, especially about the universal basic income, I find it's something that they're trying to do. So let's say you've got one group of people that really want to excel at what they do. They work hard, they do the 60, 70 hours a week, and they're succeeding, they're smart with their money, and then you see their wealth start to increase above everyone else. I find with the universal basic income, as they start to get up and start being successful and being smart with their money, the tax rate to bring everyone else up is absolutely going to smash all their hard work. So do you think it will get to a point where people go, you know what? I'm going to get paid whether I work or not. I'm in a minimum wage job anyway. Stuff it. I'm not working. Do you find that the initial loss of labour is going to massively outweigh the cheap labour later on?
Oh, it will do. It will do. And then you'll have the force loop coming back to get them back into the workforce and into that. The other problem Australia's got is if we do not increase, you know, this is the anti-side of immigration, I suppose. In a way, if we don't increase immigration, we don't have a workforce. We've got a massively aging population that's aging really quickly, right? And we're not alone. Germany, France, you name it, everyone is in the same boat. That we're going to have serious problems with a workforce shortly.
The other thing that a lot of people don't take into account, a lot of the kids coming through university are thinking that they're special, that they need to go straight to the top was a job. They don't understand you have to work from the bottom and go up, even if you are university qualified. So not only are we losing the hardworking Gen Xers, but we're also going to be getting a whole new generation of people that's like, no, that job's beneath me, I'm not doing it. So it's a double-edged sword on that one. So
one of the really interesting things I'll just bring up on that, this could be my interesting topic for the day, is that a lot of the big investment firms, the BlackRocks of the world, the Vanguards and Fidelity and that sort of stuff, what they're doing is they're not taking graduates anymore. Right? So the graduates they take, the economists, the mathematicians and all that sort of stuff, that go into their analytics division and all that sort of stuff. But if you're going to work on the trading floor, they're going back to old school used car salesmen, slightly older, being knocked around. One of the lines, I can't remember which. I think it's out of the Wolf of Wall Street, where it's bring them to me young, dumb, and full of energy, and I'll turn them into a millionaire. That's returning to the financial markets. So a hedge fund guy that I know runs his hedge fund out of the Bahamas. He hates hiring graduates. He said because they've got this entitlement thing associated with them. So he just doesn't. He wants people that have learnt trading or learnt whatever skill it is that he requires the hard way, have been battered and bruised, have been bankrupt, have done all that stuff that scars you to make it harder for you to go back on that again, because you've got that edge. And that's part of his trading edge, is having these people that, that are hardened and tough and out there. So.
Okay, and we've got another comment here from Katrin, I think it is, maybe Katrina. On my screen, it cuts it off a little bit short, so I apologise if I got butchered your name. As to destroying attraction of service in police or armed forces, you could see it as a globalist influence via Twitter, big tech, wokeness, owner, press, etc., to deliberately remove the effective force of army and police so that there is no force to resist complete takeover if strings are being pulled from anywhere else. And and it's when becomes obvious to the larger percentage of the population. So that's looks like it's from Robert.
The one thing is, everyone's got to get out of the head that someone's pulling the strings. That's not happening anymore. That finished 25 years ago, right? The people that think that there is 4 or 5 people sitting around pulling the strings, forget it. Doesn't happen. Where we are now in the cycle is groupthink. There is enough people in the population, especially in decision-making positions, academia, political places, banking, politics, industrial, in all the big things now that have had their minds woven through the education system. The strings were pulled back in the 60s and 70s. Those guys are dead, but their ideals live on. There is no one pulling the strings anymore. There is no one sitting there guiding this. It's all group think stuff now. And you can see it by the WEF, right? When they had that big Davos thing, it is a massive group think tank. There's no one person pulling the strings. It's a group of people who are all thinking the same way and don't want to get out of line with that thinking, right? So get that out of your head right now. It's the same as if you're worried about directors' IDs and ID cards and all that sort of stuff. The time to have that fight was back in the 80s, right? It's not now. That train has left the station, right? Move on. And that's what a lot of this stuff that's been put out there in the media, all being put out there in the underground websites, is purely and simply to keep that groupthink going. But groupthink on both sides. Groupthink on those that want to do it and the groupthink on those that are against it. right? So what we want is a group in between that are seeing the bit. That's how we take back society. That's how we take back the world and everything. Is we've got to come back into the middle. We've got to come back to the fair moral values that underpin our societies, right, and have done since the birth of the planet, basically. That we get that. So the fringes on both sides, you're never gonna bring them back in. So.
Okay, no worries. We've only got a couple of minutes left over before you've got to run. So any final last words of wisdom or interesting facts that you want to add to this stream as well, Steve?
No, I think that's about it for tonight. What I really look at, what do you call it? My head's just gone. Anyway,
I'm not the only one that it happens to. I don't feel so bad now.
yeah, I'm thinking about the next session. So.
Yeah, no, all good. So for the people who don't know, we do have the Global Wealth Mastery Program. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah, GWM.
So that I'm actually really looking forward to that one. So looking forward to some of the updates and some of the deals we're doing in there. So if the people listening in now want to learn more about that, please make sure you email support@globalwealthclub.com and they'll be able to put you in contact, send you the details. But other than that, Steve, we're right on time for wrapping up on things. So I'm going to call it a day here. And Grace, if you're still on there, thanks very much for everyone who tuned in today. And if you do have any other information, like I said, that email address is support@globalwealthclub.com. And you can also get more information on the website, globalwealthclub.com.
To kick the habit that my mind is free.